There is nothing more dangerous than a powerful person with an undisciplined mind. A man who cannot think for himself is a prisoner, even if there are no chains on his hands. The greatest war you will ever fight is not with weapons, not with armies, and not with men. It is the battle for your mind. If you lose that battle, you lose everything. Think about this. Who taught you how to think? Who trained you on how to separate emotion from truth? Most people assume they are thinking, but they are merely reacting. Reacting to fear, reacting to pressure, reacting to what the world tells them to believe. But tonight, I want to challenge you to stop reacting and start reasoning. Because your mind is the engine of your destiny. If you want to live an extraordinary life, you must develop a rational mind. And in this message, I will give you the keys to unlock that power. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will have the tools to take full control of your mind and ultimately your life. Your life is a direct result of your thoughts. Every action, every decision, every moment of your existence is first birthed in the mind. The way you think shapes the way you see the world, and the way you see the world dictates how you respond to it. A man who does not understand the power of his own mind is like a lion that believes it is a sheep. He has strength, but does not use it. He has potential, but does not maximize it. He has the ability to rule, but instead remains controlled. That is the tragedy of an undisciplined mind. It submits to circumstances rather than shaping them. Many people live as prisoners, not because of physical chains, but because of mental limitations. They believe what they have been told, rather than discovering the truth for themselves. They adopt the thinking patterns of those around them, rather than developing their own ability to reason. They allow emotions, fears, and traditions to govern their decisions instead of seeking wisdom. But if you want to take control of your life, you must first take control of your mind. You must recognize that your thoughts are the architects of your destiny. If you think small, you will live small. If you think in fear, you will live in fear. If you think in defeat, you will always be defeated. But if you think with clarity, with wisdom, and with purpose, you will rise above every obstacle that life throws your way. The greatest men in history were not those who simply reacted to life, but those who mastered their own thinking. They trained their minds to be disciplined, to question, to seek understanding, and to refuse ignorance. A rational mind does not accept everything it hears. It tests, it examines, it seeks truth. A rational mind does not act on impulse. It considers, it weighs options, and it chooses wisely. A rational mind does not allow emotions to dictate its course. It acknowledges feelings, but is not ruled by them. If you can develop this kind of thinking, nothing will be impossible for you. You see, the problem is that most people assume they are thinking, when in reality, they are simply reacting. They allow the news to shape their fears. They allow social media to shape their values. They allow peer pressure to shape their decisions. And without realizing it, they become puppets of whatever influence is loudest in their lives. They do not analyze. They do not reflect. They do not challenge assumptions. They simply go along with whatever is presented to them. That is not thinking. That is submission. That is a life of slavery to external influences, rather than mastery over one's own mind. If you want to change your life, you must change the way you think. You must become intentional about what you allow into your mind. You must guard your thoughts the way a king guards his treasure. You must reject mental laziness and embrace the discipline of critical thinking. This means questioning what you have always believed to be true. This means examining your own biases and being willing to correct them. This means refusing to be ruled by the emotions of the moment and instead seeking wisdom in every decision. It is not easy, but it is necessary. Most people will never do this because it requires effort. It requires humility. It requires admitting that you may have been wrong. But a man who refuses to challenge his own thinking is a man who will never grow. He will repeat the same mistakes, live in the same limitations, and blame everything around him for his condition. But a man who masters his mind will master his circumstances. He will rise above challenges. He will adapt to changes. He will navigate life with wisdom and clarity. That is the power of thought. One of the greatest battles every person must fight is the war between emotion and reason. Emotions are powerful. They are immediate. They demand attention. They can rise like a storm, clouding judgment and making decisions seem urgent when they are not. But reason is different. Reason is steady. It does not react. It analyzes. It does not rush. It considers. And herein lies the challenge. Most people live their lives governed by emotion rather than reason, and as a result, they make choices that they later regret. Emotions have a place in life. They make us human. They allow us to feel love, compassion, joy, and even pain. But they were never meant to be in control. The moment emotions take the driver's seat in your decision-making, wisdom is pushed aside. Consider this. How many times have you made a decision in anger, only to regret it later? How many times have you let fear stop you from pursuing something great? How many times has excitement made you commit to something you were not prepared for? This is the danger of letting emotions lead. They feel right in the moment, but they often lead to consequences that reason would have helped you avoid. A rational mind understands that emotions are temporary, but consequences are permanent. A man who reacts based on feeling alone is like a ship without a captain, tossed back and forth by the waves of circumstance. He is up one day, down the next. He is committed today, uncertain tomorrow. He moves in circles, never progressing because his emotions change with the wind. But a man who rules over his emotions, a man who subjects his feelings to reason, is a man who cannot be easily shaken. He does not ignore his emotions, but he refuses to be controlled by them. Look at the world today. Most of the problems people face are the result of emotional decisions. Relationships break because of words spoken in anger. Finances crumble because of impulsive spending. Opportunities are lost because of fear of failure. And in all of this, reason is ignored. A rational mind asks, what is true, before reacting? It asks, what are the long-term effects of this choice, before making a decision? It does not allow temporary feelings to dictate permanent actions. Developing a rational mind requires training. It requires the discipline to pause before reacting. It requires the wisdom to seek knowledge before forming an opinion. It requires the courage to make decisions based on truth rather than comfort. Many people do not do this because it is difficult. It is easier to follow the crowd. It is easier to give in to fear. It is easier to react emotionally than to think critically. But ease has never produced greatness. Those who master their emotions and develop the ability to reason are the ones who rise to lead, to build, and to make an impact that lasts. A rational mind does not mean a lack of emotion. It means learning to use emotions wisely. It means allowing love to inspire wisdom, not blind attachment. It means allowing anger to expose injustice, not lead to destruction. It means allowing sadness to bring healing, not despair. Emotions can serve a purpose, but they must be governed by reason. If you learn to think before you act, to analyze before you decide, and to control rather than be controlled, you will not only make better choices, you will shape a life of wisdom, stability, and success. A mind without discipline is like a city without walls, exposed, vulnerable, and easily conquered. The most dangerous thing in the world is not a man with no money, no connections, or no opportunity. It is a man with no control over his mind. Such a person is easily manipulated, driven by fear and influenced by whatever voice is the loudest. He believes whatever he hears, follows whatever trend is popular, and makes decisions based on impulse rather than understanding. An untrained mind is a slave to its surroundings, never thinking independently, never questioning, never seeking truth. And that is exactly why so many people live in frustration, confusion, and defeat. Because they have never taken the time to train their minds to think. From the moment you were born, the world has been trying to shape your thinking. Your culture, your environment, your upbringing, all of these have programmed your mind in ways you may not even realize. You were taught what to believe, how to behave, what is possible, and what is impossible. But here is the question. Have you ever examined those beliefs for yourself? Have you ever challenged what you have been told? Most people never do. They accept information without questioning it. They assume that because something is common, it must be correct. But an untrained mind is easily deceived. It does not know how to distinguish truth from lies, wisdom from foolishness, or facts from opinions. And as a result, it becomes a victim of misinformation, controlled by the ideas of others rather than guided by its own reasoning. An untrained mind is also a breeding ground for fear. It believes every threat, every rumor, every negative possibility, without question. It assumes the worst before seeking understanding. It reacts before analyzing. It panics instead of preparing. And when fear takes hold of an undisciplined mind, it paralyzes progress. People stop taking risks. They stop pursuing their dreams. They become trapped in cycles of doubt, never moving forward because their minds have convinced them that failure is inevitable. But failure is not the greatest tragedy. The greatest tragedy is a person who never even tries because their mind has been conditioned to believe they cannot succeed. The world is full of distractions, and an untrained mind is easily swayed by them. It lacks focus, jumping from one idea to the next without depth or commitment. It spends hours consuming entertainment but no time developing wisdom. It absorbs information without questioning its validity. And as a result, it remains shallow, never growing, never evolving, never achieving anything of substance. But a trained mind is different. A trained mind filters what it allows in. It does not waste time on meaningless distractions. It does not accept every piece of information as truth. It seeks understanding, examines evidence, and makes informed decisions. The most successful people in the world are not necessarily the strongest or the most talented. They are the ones who have trained their minds to think critically, to question assumptions, to resist manipulation. They are not controlled by fear, emotions, or outside influences. They have disciplined their thoughts, mastered their focus, and developed the ability to reason. And that is why they succeed where others fail. If you do not train your mind, the world will train it for you. If you do not control your thoughts, someone else will. If you do not develop the ability to think for yourself, you will always be at the mercy of those who think for you. That is the danger of an untrained mind. The way you see the world is shaped by what you know. Your perspective is not simply a reflection of reality. It is a product of the information that has shaped your thinking. Two people can look at the same situation and see completely different things, not because reality has changed, but because their knowledge has given them different lenses through which to interpret it. A person with limited knowledge will always have a limited perspective. They will assume their view is the only truth, never realizing that their understanding is incomplete. But a person who seeks knowledge is constantly expanding their perspective, seeing beyond the surface, discovering deeper truths, and making decisions based on wisdom rather than assumptions. Most people live trapped within the boundaries of what they have been taught. They accept the limitations placed on them by their upbringing, their culture, or their environment, never realizing that those limitations exist only in their minds. A person raised in poverty may believe that success is out of reach, not because it is impossible, but because they have never been exposed to the knowledge of how to create wealth. A person raised in fear may believe that failure is the end, not because they cannot rise again, but because they have never been taught how to use failure as a lesson. Without knowledge, the mind remains imprisoned, unable to see beyond its current reality. But the moment new knowledge enters, the mind expands, and what once seemed impossible becomes achievable. Transformation does not begin with external change. It begins with a change in perspective. A person who sees themselves as a victim will always act like one, even if opportunities are placed before them. A person who believes they are powerless will never take action, even if the door is open for them to walk through. But when knowledge enters, it brings light. It exposes lies that have kept people bound. It reveals new possibilities. It empowers the mind to think differently, and when a person thinks differently, they live differently. The greatest enemy of transformation is ignorance. A person who refuses to learn will remain stuck in the same cycles, repeating the same mistakes, blaming circumstances for their condition rather than seeking wisdom to change it. Many people desire a better life, but they do not desire the knowledge that creates it. They pray for success but refuse to study the principles that produce it. They wish for change but reject the process of learning that makes change possible. But knowledge is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. It is the key that unlocks the door to new opportunities. The more you know, the more you can do. The more you understand, the more you can achieve. The more wisdom you gain, the more control you have over your own life. A rational mind is a mind that seeks knowledge continually. It does not settle for assumptions. It does not accept limitations without questioning them. It does not allow ignorance to dictate its decisions. Instead, it hungers for truth. It pursues understanding. It challenges old ways of thinking and embraces new possibilities. A person who commits to lifelong learning will never remain the same. They will rise, they will grow, and they will become unstoppable. Because once the mind is transformed by knowledge, nothing can hold it back. The ability to think critically is one of the most powerful skills a person can develop. It is what separates leaders from followers, visionaries from the ordinary, and success from failure. Critical thinking is not about being skeptical of everything. It is about learning to ask the right questions, analyze information, and separate truth from deception. Without this skill, a person is easily manipulated, blindly following trends, believing false narratives and making poor decisions that could have been avoided with careful reasoning. But when you master the art of critical thinking, you take control of your own mind, ensuring that your thoughts are shaped by wisdom rather than external influences. Most people do not think critically because it requires effort. It is easier to accept what is presented rather than question it. It is easier to follow emotions rather than examine facts. It is easier to trust popular opinion rather than do the hard work of investigating the truth. But the danger of this kind of lazy thinking is that it leads to a life of deception. You will be controlled by what others want you to believe. You will be misled by false information. You will make choices that feel right in the moment but lead to regret in the future. And worst of all, you will never truly understand your own potential because you never challenge the limitations placed on your mind. A rational mind does not accept things at face value. It does not believe everything it hears. It does not make assumptions based on emotions alone. Instead, it questions, it researches, it analyzes. When faced with information, it asks, who is saying this and why? When confronted with a decision, it considers, what are the long-term effects of this choice? When emotions try to take control, it steps back and asks, what is the truth in this situation? This discipline of thinking prevents unnecessary mistakes, protects against manipulation, and ensures that every choice is made with clarity and wisdom. The world is filled with distractions, and those who do not think critically are easily swayed by them. They are convinced by clever words rather than sound reasoning. They react to news and social media without checking facts. They assume that because something is popular, it must be true. But the reality is that deception is often more attractive than truth. Lies are designed to be convincing. Misinformation is crafted to sound reasonable. Fear is packaged as wisdom. And if a person does not train their mind to think critically, they will be deceived again and again, never realizing that their own lack of reasoning is keeping them in cycles of confusion. Developing. A rational mind requires intentionality. It requires you to challenge your own beliefs, to examine why you think the way you do, and to seek wisdom beyond what is convenient. It means refusing to let emotions dictate your decisions and instead allowing logic and wisdom to lead. It means recognizing that not everything you hear is true and not everything you feel is right. It means taking responsibility for your own thoughts rather than letting the world think for you. Most people will never do this because it requires humility. It requires admitting that you do not know everything and that some of what you have believed may be wrong. But for those who are willing to go through this process, the reward is priceless. A rational mind is a powerful mind. It is a mind that cannot be easily deceived, a mind that makes wise choices, a mind that builds a future based on truth rather than illusion. And when you master the art of critical thinking, you do not just change your thoughts, you change your life. A rational mind is a gift, but using it is a choice. Intelligence is not just about acquiring knowledge. It is about applying wisdom, making sound decisions, and taking responsibility for the way you think. The world is full of people with potential, people with intelligence, people with great ideas, but many of them never rise beyond mediocrity because they fail to take responsibility for their own minds. They allow external influences to dictate their beliefs, emotions to control their decisions, and fear to limit their progress. But true intelligence is not just the ability to think, it is the discipline to think correctly. It is the courage to reject ignorance, the commitment to seek truth, and the responsibility to use knowledge for something greater than oneself. Most people assume that intelligence is something you are born with, but that is not true. But that is not true. Intelligence must be developed, trained, and sharpened. A person who refuses to challenge their own thinking, who avoids learning, who settles for shallow understanding, is a person who wastes the potential of their own mind. It is not enough to have the capacity to think. You must use it wisely. You must refine your ability to reason, to analyze, to separate fact from fiction. Otherwise, you become like a man who owns a sword but never sharpens it, or a soldier who enters battle but never learns how to fight. Intelligence that is not used properly is wasted. One of the greatest tragedies is when a person who has knowledge fails to act on it. They know what is right, but do what is wrong. They understand the principles of success, but never apply them. They see the truth, but choose to ignore it because it is inconvenient. This is the failure of many brilliant minds. They have knowledge but lack responsibility. They have insight but refuse to take action. And so they remain stuck, not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack the discipline to use it effectively. Intelligence without responsibility is powerless. It does not matter how much you know if you are unwilling to apply it to your life. A rational mind does not only think for itself, it takes responsibility for its thoughts and actions. It does not blame others for its failures. It does not wait for circumstances to change before making better decisions. It does not allow past experiences to dictate future possibilities. Instead, it takes full ownership of its thinking, constantly refining, learning, and improving. This is the mindset that separates leaders from followers, victors from victims. A person who is responsible for their own mind is a person who cannot be controlled by fear, by manipulation, or by the opinions of others. They think with clarity, act with wisdom, and move with purpose. This responsibility extends beyond personal success. It is about influence. A mind that has been trained to think correctly has the power to impact others. It can inspire change, challenge deception, and lead people toward truth. But this influence is a responsibility, not a privilege. It requires integrity, humility, and a commitment to lifelong learning. If a person misuses their intelligence, if they use it to deceive, to manipulate, or to promote ignorance, they not only harm themselves, but they also lead others into darkness. But when a person takes full responsibility for their intelligence, using it to build, to uplift, and to enlighten, they become a force that cannot be ignored. Your mind is your greatest asset, but it is also your greatest responsibility. If you do not train it, you will be controlled by those who do. If you do not discipline it, you will be ruled by emotions, fears, and deceptions. If you do not take ownership of your own thinking, you will spend your life following rather than leading. But the moment you decide to take full responsibility for your intelligence, to master your mind, and to commit to wisdom, you will rise above limitations, break through barriers, and step into a level of clarity, influence, and power that few ever reach. Everything rises and falls on the mind. Your thoughts shape your decisions shape your actions, and your actions determine the course of your life. The difference between success and failure, between wisdom and regret, between a life of purpose and a life of confusion, is the ability to develop a rational mind. A mind that is not ruled by emotions, not swayed by deception, not limited by ignorance, but a mind that is trained to think critically, to seek truth, and to act with wisdom. The world is filled with distractions, filled with voices that seek to control your thinking, filled with influences that will either elevate you or enslave you. If you do not take responsibility for your own mind, someone else will take control of it for you. If you do not train yourself to think critically, to analyze, to question, and to learn, you will remain stuck in cycles of confusion and limitation. But the moment you decide to master your thoughts, to govern your emotions, to expand your knowledge, and to take full responsibility for your intelligence, you will unlock the greatest power you have been given, the ability to shape your own destiny. This is the call to rise above shallow thinking, to reject the easy path of assumption and emotional reaction, to embrace the discipline of wisdom and reason. The world does not need more people who simply react. It needs more people who think, who lead, who build, who create, and who make decisions that impact generations. And that journey begins with you. Train your mind, sharpen your reasoning, take control of your thoughts, and step boldly into the life you were created to live. Because when you develop a rational mind, you do not just change your thinking, you change your future.